So we had mis and disinformation at number 16 last year. It jumped up to the number one risk in the 2-year time frame. And we weren't expecting that to jump up that fast.
I read the report, so I know what the key finding for 2024 is. But for the people who haven't saw it yet, can you tell us a little bit about the characteristics of 2024?
This year, in the next 2 years, there's a big concern around mis and disinformation, in part perpetuated by synthetic content. Or there's the concern around AI-generated risks. But of course, it's very understandable given that nearly 4 billion people are going to some kind of municipal or national election in the next 2 years across the entire globe. So there's a big concern that all of these low-cost, no-cost tools that we've seen that can generate synthetic content, whether it's video or audio or text, that could play into this. But it's pretty closely followed by concerns around societal polarization, around extreme weather, around economic concerns such as inflation. There's still a high risk of economic downturn that still makes it into the top 10. And of course, the risks around interstate conflict that comes in as well in the top 10. So there's a wide mix of concerns for the next 2-year time frame. But then when you look at the 10-year time frame, it's very much environmental risks, which is exactly the same as last year. People are deeply concerned about extreme weather. People are deeply concerned. This is a new risk that we introduced on the critical changes to Earth systems. So is it possible that we could cross some vital tipping points in the Earth's climate systems in the next 10 years?
Last year, I remember the cost of living was number one. Where did that go?
So the cost of living is still one of the top concerns in the 0-year time frame. So we do ask a question which focuses on what is happening in this particular year. So the issues that they're most concerned about in 2024. Inflation is still a number 7 risk in the 2-year time frame. And economic downturn is still a key concern, number 9 in the 2-year time frame. Lack of economic opportunity is at number 6 in the 2-year time frame. So there's still quite a lot of concern when it comes to the various aspects of economic issues. The inflation risk being so high, even as central banks are taking action on inflation and are starting to bring it under control, I think also has a lot to do with the possibility of continued supply shocks, such as what we're seeing now happening in the Middle East, and what that's doing to the passage of cargo ships across the Red Sea. So I think there's a continued sense of uncertainty, even if central banks are doing their jobs well.
Because it's a poly-crisis era, that it's not just one thing, it's climate change, it's technology, it's economic issues. So it's like a lot of several issues together. When this kind of poly-crisis era, how do you think we should approach it differently?
So I think the breakthrough endeavors concept is really important. There needs to be coalitions of the willing on various areas. I think finding consensus on every single topic across very large sets of people, we would be waiting a long time for that consensus. Whereas if there can be some important efforts, some important endeavors, whether it's things like climate clubs or whether it's research on a particularly problematic medical issue or health-related issue, these are things where people have to come together across science, across business, across government, and actually start making an impact. And a lot of the types of things the forum does are to try to pull together those coalitions of the willing and to be among those innovators, those pioneers that will actually start finding some of those solutions. That's one. The second is global dialogue is still incredibly important. The theme of the meeting that we just had was about rebuilding trust. And one of the reasons we picked that theme is that because there are so many crises, because there are so many potential shocks coming, it's very important that people simply talk, that they simply have a connection with each other to be able to start breaking down some of these issues. And then, of course, that requires, strategy, planning, resources, and all of the other things that are necessary. But we believe that simply the first step is the dialogue that builds the trust between different leaders.
As you just mentioned, that rebuilding trust is really important, but I feel like the world is getting more divided and more people are not talking to each other.
Yeah, as much as we're talking about the Global Risks Report, and of course it's really important to have a sort of a compass for where things might be going, it's also really important to have lighthouses. It's also really important to know where are the bright spots, where are the interesting innovations, where is the source of hope and opportunity. Of course, we're looking at concerns. Of course, we're looking at potential risks. But, for example, what artificial intelligence can do quickly in the area of drug discovery is incredible and can help solve for diseases that may exist now, but also can help solve for many medical issues in the future. Similarly, when it comes to education, every child can actually have a personalized tutor, but not in isolation. And I think this is where the silver linings have to be married with the ancient wisdom that we know already. Yes, children do need a learning environment in which they can be with other children. Yes, they do need a teacher who can be with them. But at the same time, let's use the power of that personalized learning that artificial intelligence can offer, and let's augment what they're able to do. So I think a lot of the solutions that we saw, it was not about silver bullets. It was not about, just one-stop solutions, but it was about how do we holistically build in some of these new technologies, some of these new ideas into systems that work already and improve them.
Especially related to economy, that we can't just look into GDP anymore, but with the climate change and whatnot, we have to try to see a way to grow differently. From the World Economic Forum point of view, what kind of paradigm or frame are you looking in a different angle?
Yeah. So we released also earlier this month our Future of Growth framework, and we will now have a 2-year Future of Growth initiative, which is bringing together policymakers, top economists, and business leaders to have exactly that dialogue. How do we get from the type of growth we've had in the past to the type of growth we want in the future? And that framework, what we're basically recommending is that we should not be looking at GDP alone, and we should be trying to look also at the quality of growth. And what we proposed is a way of looking at the quality of growth. So we produced a set of indicators under innovation, a set of indicators around sustainability, a set of indicators on inclusion, and a set of indicators on resilience. And we've tried to put together around each one of those 4 pillars the indicators that will be helpful in guiding a more future orientation to that growth. So you may be growing fast in the short term, but if it's coming at the price of future resilience, or if it's not really looking at the latest innovations and developments and not actually building out some investment in those developments, or not taking into account the climate, or leaving half the population behind, then that's not going to be very good growth in the long term. So we've tried to provide a measure which looks at the quantitative growth as well as some of these qualitative aspects of growth. And this will be an ongoing 2-year project.